Hello and welcome everyone to the webinar, So You Want to Retire, the Fundamentals of Retirement Planning. My name is Chris Buckley, the founder of Allegro Wealth, and I welcome you to the webinar and hope you gain valuable information from this. First off, before we start, I need to hit the disclosures so you can see those on the screen. So retirement planning, that's the topic of today's webinar. And I want to retrace our steps a little bit to the last webinar, the strings of financial security, where we talked about the importance of setting a financial plan in place. And when you're doing a financial planning engagement with Allegro Wealth, what are the areas that you're going to see impacted by that financial plan? Well, you're going to see the area of investments impacted. And investments is where we're going to kind of drill down a little bit more today and talk about retirement income planning. The investment area is particularly where most of the retirement income is going to come from. However, we also talk about insurance during a financial planning engagement. Why? You need a plan for retirement income, but every plan deserves to be protected. And I never want a client to come to me and say, oh my gosh, Chris, something terrible just happened. What are we going to do about it? It's not my job as an advisor to say, well, gee, I don't know. I've never thought about that. My job is to ask the tough questions and to make sure that we have strategies for asset protection in place. Tax strategies is another area. No, we're not CPAs. We don't do anyone's taxes, but we keep our eyes on taxes to make sure that we're effectively and efficiently handling people's assets so that taxes, as they may rise in the future, don't completely put a strain on somebody's financial ability to retire and achieve the goals that they've set for themselves. Legacy planning is another one. People want to leave the world behind maybe a better place than the way they found it. So you may want to leave assets to family, to friends, to charitable organizations, to institutions of higher learning or some other organization, churches, and so on and so forth. So as we're digging deep into retirement planning, we have to understand that during retirement, medical care has gotten better, and people are now living a much longer life. You can see somebody, if they retire at age 65, might live 20, 30, 40 years in the future. And nobody wants to run out of money that entire length of time. It's possible for people that retire that they might live as long in retirement as they did during their working years. So this raises a lot of questions. And we see these questions all the time from clients. How much income will I need? Will I have enough money? How much risk should I take? How do I keep from losing all my money in retirement? Because I'm concerned about the volatility of the market. How do I turn all those assets into income? How long will that income last? Am I ready to retire now? I ask this question a lot of people. A lot of people say, I'd like to retire last week. Well, generally, that's not the case, but the question becomes, when will I be ready to retire? And this really boils down to one simple question for everyone. And basically, that question is, will I be okay? That's a question that we help our clients answer during our financial planning engagements. And we set a path forward to make sure that they have the confidence to retire. Before I get into retirement planning, though, I want to get into well-being as a big picture, because sure, we're concerned about economics and finance here, but we're also concerned about the person themselves. And in this post-COVID world that we lived in, there has been a heightened sense of well-being. So if you take a look at the CDC's websites, they define well-being through these factors: physical, economic, social, emotional, psychological, development and activity, life satisfaction, domain-specific satisfaction, and engaging work and activities. Yes, here at Allegro Wealth, we help with people's economic well-being. But if you think about it, working in one area, such as economic well-being, helps create well-being in all these other areas that we see on the screen here. If you feel confident about your financial plan and the ability to retire, you're going to feel less stress. So you're going to have improved physical well-being. You probably sleep a little bit better. You're going to have more confidence. So social well-being. The less stress is going to equal better emotional and psychological well-being. However, life is not just about economics. It's also about engaging work and activities. And as a financial advisor, yes, I'm concerned about economics and finance, but I'm also concerned about the person. And from a life satisfaction standpoint, engaging activities is very important. A lot of people personally who retire successfully don't retire from something, but they retire to something. And I want to bring that point out and stress it. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's playing tennis or golf or fishing, or maybe it's volunteering at a church or another organization. Maybe it's helping out with the grandkids or so on and so forth. But engaging activities in life, giving life meaning and purpose is very important. So let's not forget about that as well. So a financial plan is what we help people with here at Allegro Wealth. And I think John Buckley says it best. Most people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And that is what we do with our clients here at Allegro Wealth. Make sure they have a plan in place to give them the confidence to achieve the goals and objectives they have for themselves. So we can talk about the threats to retirement. Why do we need a plan? Well, maybe it's dying too soon, and maybe you never get to retirement, and maybe you never finish that savings plan. And what about the people you leave behind? There's the other thing that we brought up too, living a very long life. Retirement can last 30 or 40 years. And that brings up the question there, do you want to run out of money before you run out of months? Think about that one. It is very important. The typical threats, though, that we see to retirement: market volatility. Well, we've been going through that ever since COVID. In 2020, we saw the market crash in March, but 3 months later, it was back and kept rising. The height of the S&P 500 market was right around the beginning of January 2022. But since then, we've seen a lot of volatility in the market, and we're still not quite back to those January 2022 highs. Taxes. I don't think there's a threat of any taxes being increased in the next few years, but let's face it, we've printed a lot of money. The debt has soared. What do you think are going to happen to taxes in 5, 6, 7 years in the future? Good chance those things go up. Changes in technology. Right now, there's a lot of excitement about AI and other related technologies. These technologies have a cost, and people want to participate in these new technologies. We need to plan for that in retirement. Planned obsolescence. What do I mean by that? Well, in 15 years, the hot water heater goes out. You put a 30-year roof on your home, and it only lasted 18, 20, 21 years maybe. Things wear out. You have to replace them. Inflation, the rising cost of living. We have seen inflation, because of all the money we've printed since COVID, just go through the roof. And I don't think we're done with inflation, and I think it's going to keep going for some time. So we need to keep that in mind. Recreation, things we like to do and enjoy, cost a lot of money. During your working career, what's the day of the week that you spend the most money on recreation? Typically, that's Saturday. Once you're retired, every day is Saturday. So let's keep that in mind about the budget for recreation. Emergencies, life happens. We could also put with emergencies opportunities. Sometimes opportunities come along, we want to take advantage of those too. Sequence of returns is the last one, and I'm going to highlight and illustrate this on the next few slides. So, market volatility and sequence of returns. I'll put these together here in the next couple of slides and show how that works. But I want to talk about a retirement concept called the retirement red zone. And the retirement red zone, from the day that you retire, it's the 5 years before and the 5 years after you retire. That is known as the retirement red zone. And this 10-year period has a special influence on how you will retire. And to illustrate that, I have a conversation that I go through with clients called Brother A and Brother B. Brother A was born in 1930, and he reached the age of 65 in the year 1995. And when he retired, he said, I've got $1 million that I have saved in investments, and I'm going to invest that $1 million in the S&P 500, and I'm going to pull out $80,000 a year of income, and I'll also have Social Security, and I'm going to live a nice life. Well, the years 1995 through 1999 were very kind to him in the market. And as you can see, during this time period, he was able to pull out $80,000 a year in income, and the account value kept increasing during those years. He was doing very well. Well, his younger brother was born in 1935. And so he reached age 65 in the year 2000. And he saw his brother and he said, well, I have $1 million. I've saved in investment accounts, and I'm going to do just like he did. I'm going to invest that money in the S&P 500. I'm going to pull out $80,000 a year, and I'll live a nice life just like my brother. Well, the first few years of his retirement, the markets didn't cooperate with him quite as well as his brother. And because those markets in 2000, 2001, and 2 had some negative returns, and he pulled out that 80,000, you can see how dramatically his account value dropped, creating a little stress for his financial future. And if you take a look at the year 2004, Brother A still has $1.8 million, considerable amount of money more than he started with, while Brother B has $440,000. We want to make sure all our clients avoid the problem of Brother B, to de-risk those assets and make sure that income is set up, and to make sure that the growth assets aren't under the stress of providing income. So let's think about the money cycle in our lives. There's really 3 phases: accumulation, preservation, and distribution. The accumulation phase. How, where, what's the method? Is it systematic? Most people during their lives are going to save money in 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, Roth, SEP, Simple, 457 plans. There's plenty of other vehicles out there to save toward retirement. Doing this systematically, doing this every paycheck, dollar cost averaging is a great way to do this. Dollar cost averaging is your friend, even in market volatility. It's going to help you. Now, in retirement, when you're pulling out income, pulling out that income in market volatility hurts you. But while your savings, market downturns can actually be your friend. So don't get overly scared and concerned about that. And the concept of delayed gratification, that's exactly what we're doing as we're saving into that retirement account with every paycheck. And I want to point out the Stanford University marshmallow experiment. It determined that the greatest predictor of success is the ability to delay gratification. An exercise I like to do with all my clients as we're going through financial planning engagement is I want them to pretend that they're having a conversation with their future self of 20, 30, or 40 years into the future. How do you want that conversation to go? Think about it. It's an excellent exercise. Take the time to go through that. To back that study up, Temple University also did a study on personal finance and behavioral finance, which I find a very fascinating study, behavioral finance. But yes, education and occupation are great predictors of success, but the ability to delay instant gratification is a great determiner in financial success and influence. We have all seen people who earn a modest income, but save so diligently that they might have retired with assets twice as much as somebody who earned twice as much as they did because they were able to delay gratification. So please don't forget about that. The preservation phase. Ooh, wow. This is often overlooked, and there are problems here. And the problems I'll talk about specifically were 2007, 8, and 9. Right at the end of 2007, going into 8 and 9, we had the Great Recession. And we like to say that a lot of people's 401ks became 201ks. And people had saved for retirement for a long time, and they felt like they lost the ability and the confidence to retire. There was a lot of people early on in the baby boom generation that, this was a big problem for them because they set up these growth portfolios in their retirement accounts, but they never pulled back the throttle when they got to that retirement red zone. If you're 5, 6 years away from retirement, please call me. Let's set a financial plan in place and let's make sure that we de-risk some of those assets. We don't want volatility of the market dictating when you retire or what you do in your life. That we can set a financial plan in place to work around these problems. Also, if you reduce your investment risk, you're going to reduce your mental and physical stress. That'll also help out your emotional stress. So that preservation phase, I want to go back to that retirement red zone. I'm talking a lot about that. The distribution phase, you need to have a method for distributing assets. How do you do that? What do you do? Well, traditional financial planning has this thing called the 4% rule. And what does that mean? Because retirement might last 30 or 40 years and you don't want to run out of money during that long period of time, traditional financial planning says, hey, if I've got an amount of money, and in this example, $1 million, if I take 4% of that, I'm going to leave the principal alone. I don't want to touch it because I don't want to run out of money over what could potentially be a long retirement. I can live off of $40,000 of income because I don't want to take too much risk. And that money should never run out. And I'll never have to touch the $1 million and I'll still get a paycheck. Well, the 4% rule, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And problems can happen. And I think we have a better strategy for dealing with that. And I'll go over that in a minute. So let's review about our big picture financial retirement problems that a lot of people reiterate to me that they're concerned about. It's inflation, market volatility, and that longevity of life. How do we deal with those things? I also want to bring up one more point, though, the phases of retirement. There's 3 phases. The go-go years. During the go-go years, early on in retirement, health is still reasonably good. You're mobile. Maybe you get to play a lot of golf and tennis, or you want to go fishing. You want to travel and go see family and friends in other parts of the country, visit your favorite places, or maybe there's a list of places you've never been to because you've been busy working. And now you've got the time to go visit these places. It's exciting, but there's expenses involved with that. Then there's the slow go years. Health starts to become an issue. You're not quite as mobile. You can still get out and play some golf and tennis and fish and do all the things that you like, but you're not quite as able. Maybe, the body doesn't react quite as well. So you do a little less traveling, but different expenses creep into these years. The final phase would be the no-go years. And this is the final phase of life where health now is a bigger concern. And people stay closer to home because they're not able to have that mobility. They're not able to go out and do a lot of activities. Long-term care planning is a big concern for this phase. So there are different unique expenses in each one of these phases of life, and we need to make sure that we've got the money and the assets to fund these expenses. We do all this by a system of bucket planning. And bucket planning is simply having 3 buckets of money: money now, money soon, money later. If you think about it, we all have these buckets of money now during our working years. Money now is generally coming in the form of a paycheck or income from working. It might also be in a checking and a savings account. Money soon, maybe it's a savings account, money market account. It might be a 529 account for child's educational expenses. Maybe money soon is saving for a wedding that's coming up or something like that. This is money that we may not need for 3, 5, 6 years in the future. Money later bucket. This is money that's going to be 10 years or farther down the road. Of course, money later bucket, typically retirement is the big thing for the later money bucket. And in retirement, these buckets, though, change definitions a little bit. So in retirement, the first bucket, the money now bucket, this is the bucket where monthly income is coming from. It's cash or cash equivalents. It's liquid, easy to access, low rate of return, low risk, and it is there for a time horizon of 3 years. Let's go back to the market volatility that started in January of 2022. Well, a year and 9 months later, we're still having some market volatility. And if you knew that you weren't concerned about any market volatility for 3 or maybe 4 years, would that give you confidence in retirement? That's the type of confidence that we can supply to our clients in retirement. Bucket number 2 is the money soon bucket. Yes, here we're getting a better rate of return than in bucket 1, but this is low to moderate risk. I would call this a conservative bucket. We're not going to have big volatility in this bucket. These are assets that we have de-risked from our growth bucket. And this is money that we're not going to touch for 4 to 6 years in the future. And we de-risk these assets so that as we spend down bucket 1, this bucket 2, this money soon bucket, can replace bucket 1 and become the income bucket. So we still want this to be a conservative bucket. Bucket 3, the money later bucket. This is a growth bucket. This is money for the future. It's for a rate of return to keep up with inflation. It's to meet the financial obligations of the future. Remember, retirement might last 30 or 40 years. The time horizon on this bucket is going to be 7, 10, 20, 30, 40 years in the future. Yes, it's a growth bucket. That means equity bucket. But the time horizon on this reduces the risk of volatility. If I go 10 years in the S&P 500, there's never a negative rate of return. So if we got the time horizon, we'll get the growth. It'll be there. So the multi-purpose of this system of putting these 3 buckets in place is a predictable income stream. It lowers the risk. It decreases financial stress. Just like the CDC says, we're going to increase our mental, physical, and emotional well-being as well. And we're going to provide income for our clients for a longer period of time. So to accomplish all this, a financial planning engagement with Allegro Wealth, that next step is to fact find, organize, and define. I bet if I ask 50 people what investment risk means to them, I bet I get 50 different answers. So it's very important to define all these things for you specifically. Let's understand the goals and objectives, the assets, the liabilities, income sources, investments, insurance, taxes, and legal documents. And make sure we understand how all these things work together for your specific financial plan. So, my name is Chris Buckley with Allegro Wealth, and we say, let's compose your financial future together. Reach out to me this next week, and I'll take 20% off the financial planning engagement, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.